close the gap on some of your December 9th items, hear some of your concerns for the ongoing budget process, take testimony from both department heads and members of the public, and then we will, after that, be talking in the closed session on under labor relations for any actions that we do take. We do also recognize there are a few programs that will require fine-tuning out there, and we'll talk at those at the conclusion of our presentation here today, that I think there are actions that the CEO's office could do under its authority, but we just want to check in with you and make sure that you feel it is appropriate, mainly having to do with the areas of travel and some other expenditures that are occurring out there. So that is sort of the premise of what we're doing. Again, we have no PowerPoint presentation for you today. We're interested in hearing from board members on individual concerns that you have relating the current state of the budget, what's going on both at the state and federal level. So that being said, I'll turn time over to Allison Glassy, our Assistant CEO, and Jennifer Wyatt, our Deputy CEO for Finance and Budget. Ladies.
Okay, well, real quickly, you've got the packet there with the staff report in it, so I'm just going to kind of orient you to the staff report where it talks about the challenges that we're addressing, and there are three of them, one coming from the economic conditions, which I don't think we need to belabor at this point, the potential state cuts in this fiscal year, and the requested or needed but not budgeted departmental items. And I want to stress that, in particular, the economic conditions, as they are affecting the revenue projections that Meredith Ford, our auditor, and Jennifer will be able to talk to, that's information that's come within the last couple of months. The revenue projections that were included in the budget were primarily focused on looking at the previous year, the closeout of the previous year, and projecting from there. And that is what the budget is based on, and that's all you can base the budget on. We now have the first couple months of this fiscal year information just within the last several weeks. And so it is this new information based on some fairly dramatic economic incidents in this country over the last couple of months that are leading to the changes in the revenue projections. So I want to be really clear that that's related to new information and information that's just coming in now. And we, like all the other counties in this state and all the other states in this country, are reacting to this initial information that is confirming what I guess we now can officially call a recession, according to somebody in the know on these things. The potential state cuts that we're talking about are potential state cuts to this fiscal year. Again, we're focusing on this fiscal year, but being able to address things in this fiscal year also sets us up to be better prepared to deal with the following fiscal year. And as we go through, we'll kind of differentiate things that are more likely to bear fruit this year versus things that would be more likely to bear fruit in the 2009-2010 fiscal year. But as you know, the state adopted a budget, and now in rapid succession, they're in their second special session after the budget to still deal with this fiscal year. And so items that we thought in the budget were already kind of addressed and off the table now have been essentially put back on the table. So that's where those potential budget cuts come from. And then in the area of transparency, wanting to be very clear where, because of the revenues that we were aware of before, there may be items that have been requested or that people feel that they can justify or need that are not currently in the budget, and cuts are expected to be made in order to balance them out. So we're addressing those or identifying those again so they don't get forgotten. Then in the staff report, you've got a number of choices, and each of them is kind of outlined, and it goes all the way through 9. I would point you to, well, I guess several of them. One is that previous board direction indicated that the insurance payout for the Mill Creek dams would reimburse $200,000 to the general reserve, and the remainder of it would be put in the contingency fund, the contingency reserve. And that is the consent item action that was pulled off. However, the payment from the insurance ended up being higher than what we had originally looked at. And so there are some options that not all that money needs to necessarily be put in contingency. Some of it could be used to offset some of the shortfall in the general fund itself in Budget Unit 1000. So that's what your option 1 talks about. In option 2, it's referring to what our CEO was talking about, actions that can be taken by CEO direction with board support, and it's focusing on voluntary time off, expanding the review of travel, and discontinuing purchases of bottled water. And so those are 3 very specific actions that are being recommended by your CEO. The item 3 talks about implementing mandatory time off. That is totally subject to meet and confer, and so that would be a subject for closed session, but it does discuss some of the parameters within which that would be looked at, just so there's background information. Item 4 talks about increasing fees and penalties, and that's always one of those options. I think that is probably more focused on the next fiscal year. We tried to look at it this fiscal year, but there are items maybe that needed further discussion. So this is more focused on 2009-10, but I want to point out the last bullet point. Other suggestions are encouraged from board members, departments, bargaining units, staff, et cetera. So this is an area where we are seeking additional suggestions. Option 5 is relying on fund balance. That is something that we have certainly done in previous years. Each year, however, the fund balance has been less. And one of the reasons for that is, quite frankly, the better you get at budgeting and kind of tightening up your budget, the less fund balance you should have. I would also point out that some of the fund balance this last year was attributable to revenues, unanticipated revenues. And we're trying to, this year, I guess I'd point that out, this year is the first year that you can't assume that your revenues will be flat or will increase before the end of the year. So this is why we're kind of taking the unprecedented action of coming to you now. This is a year in which revenues may indeed fall throughout the year, and we need to look at that. But I would just remind you that hasn't happened in previous years, at least not in the last decade. So item 6 is eliminate